And now Bloopers with Jonathan Hewat. Moments which the broadcasters hoped and believed were long forgotten. Today, Jonathan's in a somewhat artistic mood.
Tonight's presentation is Macbeth, considered by many to be the greatest work of the Bird of Avon. I'm sorry, should have read, The Bard of Avon.
Hello, and welcome to another 15 minutes of media bashing.
I don't think you can say that all the newspapers in this country are anti-royalist.
No, but the Times is, the fellow who you had, Mr. McNeil, on Sunday morning, who comes from the Times.
Mr. Who?
There's 3 million people unemployed here, and yet you've got to employ the sub-editor of the Sunday Times.
No, he isn't the sub-editor. He is not the sub-editor.
Why don't you give somebody else
Do you know, listening to you, it almost makes me despair that whether people actually understand anything. I mean, he isn't the sub-editor of the Sunday Times. Andrew Neil is the editor of the Times. And at least get your facts right, for goodness sake. The old broadcaster's prayer used to be, Ted, and I think it certainly applies in your case, embrace your game before you open your mouth.
After all, you never know who might be tuned in.
I think anybody who drives a convertible in this climate is a dickhead anyway. Fancy owning a convertible in this country. So, there you go. If you've got a convertible, then you deserve to get leafleted. Just trying to think whose car it was I saw parked out here the other day. Oh, yes. Just called Andrew Neil a dickhead.
Though the same could be said about some broadcasters, too.
In which state of the United States was President Kennedy assassinated? In Texas.
That sort of slip can so easily happen.
Who directed the films Platoon and Born on the 4th of July?
Oliver Stone.
And what was the first name of pop singer Harry Nilsson? Oh, I'll ask you another one there. Who sang about a dog called Shep?
Pass.
On which transport system would you need to negotiate locks?
The canals.
H20 is the scientific symbol for what?
Oh, pass.
Sorry, H2O. What am I doing?
Water.
I'll give you pardon. That's my right. We'll start that video. Have you stopped the clock there, Alan?
This week's blooper topic is music. The people who make it, the people who talk about it, and, of course, the people who bring it to you.
Pachelbel's Canon in D major. Janusz Roller was conducting the Franz Liszt Chamber Orchestra.
Radio announcers have a very difficult task when it comes to music. If you're not familiar with a piece such as The Bartered Bride by Smetana, what you can say can be just a trifle misleading.
And tonight's music includes Walton's Spitfire Prelude, Smetana's Overture The Battered Bride, and the Toreador song from Carmen.
Talking of Carmen, that particular opera has been staged all over the world. But for those of us who aren't too familiar with the storyline, it's advisable to study those detailed synopses which they print in the programmes.
It contains programme notes written in total naivety by the Paris Opera for the benefit of its English and American patrons. And it is a rundown, an extract from a synopsis of Carmen, which English-speaking people were provided with some years ago at the opera to follow the plot. And this is the way the French translator gives it to us. Carmen is a cigar makeress from a Tobago factory who loves with Don Jose of the Mounting Guard. Carmen takes a flower from her corsets and lances it to Don Jose. Duet, Talk Me of My Mother. There is a noise inside the Tobago factory, and the revolting cigar makeress bursts into the stage. But here are the bugles singing his retreat. Don Jose will leave and draws his sword. Called by Carmen, shrieks the two smugglers interfere with her, but Don Jose is bound to desert. He will follow into them. Final chorus, opening sky, wandering life. Act 4, a place in Seville. Procession of ball spiders. The roaring of the balls heard in the arena.
Light operas such as Gilbert and Sullivan can get a bit of a bashing from the broadcasters too.
We've got a full week this week, starting with tomorrow until Saturday, 7:30 nightly, and a matinee at 2:30 on Saturday. Western Operatic Society stages the Mikado at the Playhouse.
Mikado.
Some classical composers have singularly obscure names, which can be very difficult to pronounce, so it's a great relief to introduce works by the better-known and easily pronounced names such as Haydn and Wagner.
The Prelude and Liebestod from Tristan and Isolde by Wagner. I'll do that again on second thoughts.
Tonight at 7 o'clock at the Bath Abbey, Bath Choral and Orchestral Society present a concert of Haydn's creation.
You might not believe it, but extremely commonplace names like Trevelyan can give some presenters unexpected difficulty.
Soloists include Helen Field, soprano, Linda Finney, contralto, John Trelevey... Linda Finney, contralto, John Treleaven, tenor, and Paul Hudson... Trevelyan?
Must be.
Trevelyan.
Leave him out. Leave him out.
Linda Finney, contralto, John Trevelyan, tenor. The soloists include Helen Field, soprano, Linda Finney, contralto, John Trevelyan, tenor, and Paul Hudson, bass.
At least you wouldn't get the word bass wrong.
The serenade for wind, cello and bass, or even bass, in D minor, are just thirsty.
But what about popular music? Jazz, for instance. Count Basie, Dizzy Gillespie, Oscar Peterson.
But now here's some programme news from Michael Murray.
Oscar Peterson was in Oxford over the weekend.
Every disc jockey has an encyclopedic knowledge of all those pop groups and every little fact about them. Very impressive.
Tremendous record from Billy Joel and You Can't Hurry Love. So, an hour there with Jim Alcock. Hello, Polly. What was you waiting?
That wasn't Billy Joel.
It was, wasn't it?
It wasn't.
Well, that's what you've written down here.
I haven't.
I'm glad you're awake. You sussed it out very quickly, didn't you?
That was my test question for the day, wasn't it?
Very good indeed, Polly. So back announce the record, then properly do the job properly if you're going to do it.
Phil Collins.
Of course, the Genesis man.
There's other kinds of problems that face presenters, like what disc to play immediately after an urgent news flash.
From the KYUU newsroom, it is now reported at least 60 injuries at 3 hospitals around the Calexico El Centro area, where that major earthquake took place at 4:16 this afternoon. Seismologists now say that registered 6.4. Those are the seismologists in Pasadena, and it was centered 10 miles east of Calexico, right on the Mexican border. And if you're a tourist, welcome to the land of rock and roll. This is 99.7 KYUU.
I feel the earth move under my feet. I feel the sky tumbling down.
There's a lovely story of the presenter who, on hearing the news of Bing Crosby's death, dashed to the record library while the news was on and grabbed a Crosby disc to play as a small tribute after the news. Putting the stylus on the first track just as the bulletin ended, listeners were somewhat horrified to hear Bing singing the lyrics, "Heaven, I'm in heaven." Other presenters had all kinds of different problems when Crosby died.
Crosby will perhaps be remembered for his song White Christmas, one of the biggest selling records of all time.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
So much for our special topic of music, although I do have a real masterpiece for you a little bit later on, dating way back to 1937, so don't go away. Today's phone call of the week has something of a musical feel to it, with listeners offering to play a tune on air down the telephone. With some instruments you could do with more than one pair of hands.
Give us one that you know how to play on acoustic.
Beatles ones. I know Maxwell's Silver Hammer, Obla Di Obla Da I'm particularly proficient at.
Well, Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Yes.
There's a problem here.
What's that?
Marianne, ignoring me request to walk over here to commence telephone holding activities, has gone into the kitchen. And now I can't signal her because I can't see her and she can't see me. And I'm stranded and I can't play guitar and hold the phone.
What about putting the phone? I'll tell you the way to do it.
Yeah.
You put the phone receiver in your mouth and you clench it with your teeth.
But then the bit that my ear needs to go next to will be next to me nose.
You've got a funny shaped mouth. No. Yeah, no. What kind of a handset is it?
Well, it's sort of a handset, really. It's one of those that you hold in between the bit that goes next to your ear and the bit that goes next to your mouth.
Provided the mouth isn't at the back of the head or behind the ear or something. The BBC Club is a rich source of stories from off-duty broadcasters relaxing over a glass or three and recalling occasions when a momentary lapse of concentration ran the risk of their gaining a place in the National Blooper Archive.
Well, of course, when you work on an early morning programme like I do on the Today programme on Radio 4, one of the great dangers is falling asleep on air. I mean, that's easier done than you might imagine, because although there's a terrific rush of adrenaline when you go on air at 6:30, if the day's a bit quiet, and there aren't any terribly fast or fascinating news stories, your mind starts wandering towards breakfast at 9 o'clock and who you're having lunch with that day, and if you've got the night off, if you're going out that evening. And this happened to me. Well, it was absolutely dreadful. I don't know how many people noticed it, curiously, because I didn't get any angry letters or phone calls afterwards. But I was interviewing an extremely distinguished gentleman, member of the House of Lords, about a subject of the day, and I won't reveal who he was, because it's too embarrassing, really. And it was like the man who said he dreamt that he was addressing the House of Lords and he woke up and found that he was. I suddenly found myself in the middle of an interview and I thought, I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know what he's just said. I don't know what I've just said. And I'm not quite sure what I should ask him next. And probably, if you listen very carefully, there was a nanosecond of garble from me, or even a pause. And then I snapped myself awake and carried on. But it was awful. Oh, it was dreadful. I had nightmares about it for weeks afterwards, and I touched wood, which I'm doing now. I don't think I've ever fallen asleep since. I intend not to anyway.
Perhaps it wouldn't be fair if I didn't include at least one of the myriad of howlers I've made during many live broadcasts. It also confirms that these programmes aren't intended to poke fun at presenters, just highlight their very occasional faux pas. So, this then is how good I can be.
Diana Ross. It's now 17 minutes past 2:15, which means it's 13 minutes to 7.
Beat that. Go on.
And from the British Broadcasting Corporation.
So, from me, for now, fare thee well, as they say.
There is a tavern in the town, and there my true love sits him down, and drinks his wine as merry as can be, and never, never thinks of me. Fare thee well, for I must leave thee. Do not let the parting grieve thee. Oh, the time is come for you and I to say goodbye, adieu. Adieu, kind friends, adieu.
Yes, adieu.
Oh, I can no longer stay with you.
Stay with you.
Oh, I'll hang my heart on a weeping willow tree. Fare thee well, fare thee well, fare thee well. And now I see him nevermore.
Nevermore.
He never, never knocks upon my door.
On my door.
Oh, woe is me. He penned a little note. I'll read to you the words he wrote. Fare thee well, for I must leave thee. Do not let the parting grieve thee all the time. And me to say goodbye. I'll call adieu, kind friends, adieu.
Yes, adieu.
Oh, I can't no longer stay with you. I hang my heart on a weeping willow tree. Fare thee well, fare thee well. Fare thee well. Oh, deep, my grave both wide and deep.
Wide and deep.
Put tombstones at my head and feet.
Head and feet.
And on my breast, just carve a turtle dove to sing if I love. Fare thee well, for I must leave thee. Do not let the parting grieve thee. Oh, the time has come for you and I to say goodbye. Adieu, kind friends, adieu.
Yes, adieu.
I can no longer stay with you.
Stay with you.
Oh, I'll hang my heart on a weeping willow tree. Fare thee well, fare thee well, fare thee well.
1937, eh? And Rudy Valley. Bloopers was an independent production, devised, produced and presented by Jonathan Hewat.